I never thought a coworker would go so far as to stalk me to prove I'm not disabled. But here we are and I'm still trying to wrap my head around how this even happened. Let me back up. I live with chronic pain, the kind that doesn't have a neat label or a cure, just a constant hum in my bones that never really shuts off. I explain it to people like this. Imagine your average day, you're at a 2 or 3 on the pain scale, maybe you stubbed your toe or slept weird. For me, my baseline is a 6. Every single morning I wake up and it feels like I pulled a muscle somewhere. Some days are worse, some are better, but rare are the days I dip below a 4. I function though, I work 2 jobs, I stay active, I push through. I have canes, a couple different ones, but I only break them out on days when I hit a 7 or higher. On those days, I need the extra support just to keep moving. I have all the official paperwork filed with my full-time job, disability accommodations ready to go if I ever need them. I also have a handicap placard for my car, the whole works. But I don't like to use it unless I have to. I don't want to feel like I'm asking for special treatment, you know. I just want to do my job and go home. Anyway, a few months ago I was moved to a location closer to my house. It's a smaller office and I was excited because the commute cut in half. My new boss, Amy, is incredible. She gets it. She never questions when I need to sit down for 5 minutes or take a slower pace. She just lets me work. There's another assistant coordinator named Casey, same position as me. We got along okay at first, nothing special, just coworker small talk. But I could tell early on that Casey wanted a promotion badly, like obsessed with it. Everyone in the office knew she was gunning for the next step up. Meanwhile, I'm pretty open that I don't want a promotion. A full-time position at this job would mean leaving my other job, and I like having both. Keeps my mind busy, helps with my anxiety. So Casey saw me as no threat, or so I thought. The trouble started on a Sunday in mid-January. I woke up that morning and knew it was going to be a cane day. Pain was sitting at a solid 8, maybe even a 9. I grabbed my favorite cane, the one with the wooden handle, and headed into work. I was moving slow, leaning on it, but I got through my shift. I remember Casey glancing at me a couple times, but she didn't say anything. I figured she just noticed I was having a rough day. No big deal. But the next day at work, Amy pulled me aside. She looked uncomfortable. She said Casey had come to her with a concern. Casey claimed she was worried about me. She said she'd seen me using a cane, but then earlier that week, on a day I wasn't using it, she saw me walking normally in the parking lot. She said she thought I might be faking my disability to get special treatment. I couldn't believe it. I asked Amy if she believed Casey. Amy said no, but she had to document the complaint. She told me not to worry about it, but I was worried. I've dealt with ableism before, but never from someone inside my own office. Then things got worse. A few days later, I was leaving the grocery store after work. It was around 7 in the evening, dark out. I didn't have my cane that day. I was having a decent pain day, maybe a 4. I was just walking to my car, bag in hand, when I noticed headlights behind me. They stayed on me even after I turned into the aisle where my car was parked. I looked back and saw Casey's car. She was sitting there, her phone held up like she was recording me. My stomach dropped. I didn't confront her right then. I just got in my car and drove home shaking. The next morning I went straight to Amy and told her what happened. Amy's face went pale. She said she would talk to HR immediately. HR took it seriously. They pulled Casey into a meeting. Casey's defense was that she was just trying to help. She said she knew I claimed to have chronic pain, but she'd seen me walking fine, so she wanted to prove to herself that I wasn't lying. She said she didn't mean any harm. But she recorded me without my consent. That's not helping, that's stalking. I filed a formal complaint. HR said they would investigate. Meanwhile, Casey started avoiding me, but I could feel her eyes on me every time I moved. It was like she was watching for any sign of weakness. I felt unsafe. I'm a black woman working in Texas, and I know how things can go sideways when the police get involved. I hadn't called the cops yet, but I was thinking about it. My therapist told me to document everything. So I started keeping a log, dates, times, where Casey was, what she said. Paranoid, but I didn't know what else to do. That weekend, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying that moment in the parking lot, the glare of her phone in the dark. I thought about all the times I'd been nice to her, shared coffee breaks, laughed at her jokes, and she'd been scheming the whole time. I called my mom and she told me to get a lawyer. I started looking into legal aid groups for disability rights. I felt like I was drowning in paperwork and anxiety, but that wasn't the worst of it. A week later, I got a letter from HR. They said they completed their investigation and concluded that Casey did not violate any company policy because she recorded me in a public parking lot. They said it was not considered stalking because she didn't follow me inside the store. She waited outside. She said she was just concerned about my well-being. They gave her a verbal warning and told her not to do it again. I thought I was overreacting when I first reported her. But after that letter, I knew I was. This was just the beginning. That wasn't the only nightmare I've lived through. Let me tell you about when my ex-fiancé left me out of nowhere after almost 10 years together. His name was Jacob. We met when I was 25, he was 27. We clicked instantly, moved in together after a year, got engaged after 3. By the time we hit our early 30s, we were planning the wedding and finally trying for a baby. I thought we were solid. We'd been through COVID lockdowns together, both of us working from home, taking walks to keep our sanity. He'd struggled a bit mentally after that, a lot of people did, but he seemed to be coming out of it. I was excited about the future. Then one day in spring 2 years ago, something shifted. He stopped saying I love you before he left for work. He started staying out late with his buddies, coming home smelling like beer and not really talking to me. I asked him if everything was okay, he said he was fine. I asked again a few days later and he got this look on his face like a door closing. I said, are we okay? He paused so long I knew the answer. I asked if he still loved me. He said he loved me but wasn't in love with me anymore, just like that. Within a week he was gone. He left most of his stuff, clothes, books, that stupid guitar he never played, all sitting in boxes in the spare room for weeks. I'd walk past them every day and feel my chest cave in. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every conversation, every fight, every moment where I might have missed a sign. I convinced myself there was something fundamentally wrong with me, that I was unlovable. One night I hit rock bottom. I took a bunch of pills, wrote a note and waited. I didn't tell anyone. But a friend of mine had a weird feeling and called me, and when I didn't answer she came over. She broke down my door. I don't remember much after that except waking up in a hospital bed with a tube down my throat and my mom crying next to me. That was the lowest point of my life. For months I did therapy, I started meds, I slowly put myself back together. I moved to a new apartment, donated Jacob's boxes, changed my number. I thought I'd never know why he left. And honestly, part of me didn't want to know, but closure has a way of finding you. A little over a year after the breakup, I ran into one of Jacob's old friends at a coffee shop. We chatted awkwardly, and then he said something that made my blood run cold. He said, I always felt bad Jacob never told you the real reason. I asked what he meant. He looked at me like I should already know. About the baby thing, he said. He knew you couldn't have kids, right? The doctor told him a few months before he left. He didn't want to tell you because he thought you'd be devastated, so he just bylaid. I sat there in that coffee shop, cup halfway to my mouth, and felt the world tilt. I had no idea. I'd never been tested for fertility. Jacob had never said a word about any doctor's visit. I later found out that he had gone for a routine checkup and the doctor mentioned some possible issues on his side, low sperm count or something, but Jacob twisted it into me being the problem. He convinced himself that I couldn't give him children, and instead of having an adult conversation, he decided to leave. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I just felt this weird hollow relief. It wasn't me, it was never me, he was a coward. He couldn't face reality, so he made me believe I was the broken one. After that, I deleted every remaining photo of him. I blocked his number for good. I started dating again, and a few months ago I met someone who actually talks to me about hard things. We're not engaged yet, but I'm not scared of being left anymore. Fuck you, Jacob, you did me a favor. That kind of betrayal makes you rethink everything, but nothing compared to what happened with my brother's wife. My older brother David married a woman named Ella about 2 years ago. They moved fast, dated for a few months, engaged, married within a year. I never thought much of it. Ella seemed nice enough, a bit intense maybe, but she made David happy, or so I thought. Then I started dating George. George is wonderful, kind, funny, stable. He's a few years older than me, but we just click. I met him through a mutual friend and we hit it off immediately. He told me early on that he had a past with partying and drugs, but he'd been clean for over a year and was in therapy. I respected that. He was putting in the work. About 3 months into our relationship, we went to a family dinner at my parents' house. Ella was there. The moment she saw George walk through the door, her face went white. She didn't say anything, but she stared at him all night. I pulled her aside later and asked if she knew him. She said no, but her voice was shaky. I didn't believe her. Turns out, George had briefly dated Ella about 4 years ago. They were together for about 6 months. She wanted marriage and kids immediately. George was still in his party phase and wasn't ready. It ended badly, and soon after she met my brother and married him. She never told anyone about George, and when she found out I was dating him, she lost it. She started spreading rumors. She told my parents that George was grooming me. I was 25 at the time, he was 36. That's not grooming. She said he was abusive, that he was going to drag me into addiction. She even called my job and left an anonymous tip that I was involved in drug use. My boss laughed it off because they knew me, but still, that's a serious accusation. I confronted her. I said, Ella, why are you doing this? She screamed at me. She said George was supposed to be with her, that he changed for her love and then threw her away, and now he was pretending to be perfect just to hurt her. She was delusional. I told my brother. David didn't believe me at first. Then he found the old messages on Ella's phone. She'd been sending George nasty texts for months, calling me names, threatening to ruin us both. David confronted her. She broke down crying and admitted she was jealous. She said she still loved George. My brother was devastated. He filed for divorce within 3 weeks. My family banned Ella from all events. She tried to apologize, but nobody wanted to hear it. George and I are still together, and honestly, we're thriving. Sometimes the trash takes itself out. I thought I was overreacting when I first reported Casey. But after that letter, I knew I was. This was just the beginning. 3 weeks after HR gave her that joke of a verbal warning, Casey escalated hard. I started noticing her car parked near my apartment complex. Not every day, but often enough that I felt sick pulling into my own lot. She'd pretend to be on her phone, but I caught her pointing her camera at me more than once. I called the police. An officer came by, a middle-aged guy with a tired face. I told him everything, the recording, the parking lot, the stalking. He sighed and said, Ma'am, she's filming in a public place. There's no expectation of privacy. I can't do anything unless she threatens you. I told him I was disabled and she was targeting me for my disability. He shrugged. File a harassment report if you want, but it'll probably go nowhere. I filed it anyway. They gave me a case number and told me to call again if something more serious happened. I'm a black woman in Texas. I knew that officer wasn't taking me seriously from the moment he saw my skin color. But I didn't say that out loud. I just thanked him and went back inside. Casey didn't let up. She started leaving passive-aggressive notes on my desk at work. Hope you're feeling better today. You looked awful yesterday. Don't forget to use your cane. Wouldn't want you to fall. Each note was signed with a little smiley face. I showed them to Amy, my boss. She was furious. She called HR herself. HR said there wasn't enough evidence to prove Casey wrote them. No fingerprints, no witnesses. They suggested I keep a log. So I started a journal. Every date, every time, every word. I even took photos of the notes with my phone. Then one evening in late February, I stopped at a grocery store after my shift. I was having a bad pain day, about a 7, so I used my cane. I was in the produce aisle when I noticed Casey about 20 feet away, shopping cart in front of her. She wasn't looking at vegetables. She was staring at me, phone in hand, recording. I said loudly, "Are you serious right now?" She didn't flinch. She just kept filming. A store employee walked over and asked if there was a problem. Casey smiled and said, "No problem. I'm just documenting my coworker's disability fraud." The employee looked at me confused. I said, "This woman has been stalking me for months. Please call security." The employee hesitated, then called his manager. While we waited, Casey walked closer and said, "You think you're so clever, playing disabled for sympathy. You're out here shopping just fine. I'm going to prove everyone what a liar you are." I didn't scream. I just said, "You don't know what chronic pain means, and you don't know what the law means either." Security came and they asked Casey to leave. She refused at first, then made a scene about her rights, but eventually left. The store manager gave me his card and told me I could file a trespassing order against her. I did it the next morning. That night I called my mom. I was shaking. She told me to get a lawyer. I didn't have money for a lawyer, but I found a legal aid clinic that handled disability discrimination. I called them the next day. The paralegal listened to my story, then said, "This sounds like a case of hostile work environment and retaliation. Have you filed with the EEOC yet?" I hadn't. She walked me through the process over the phone. I filled out the paperwork that weekend. 3 weeks later, I got a letter from the EEOC saying they opened an investigation. I also handed in the trespassing order to the police. They actually called Casey and gave her a warning. She stopped coming to my apartment after that, but she still came to work. And then the final update. 2 weeks after the EEOC notice, Amy called me into her office. She looked pale. She said, "You're not going to believe this." Casey sent an email to our regional director yesterday. She attached the video from the grocery store and a bunch of photos she'd taken of you over the months. She claimed you were faking your disability and that the company was being duped. I felt my stomach drop. Amy continued, "The regional director forwarded it to HR, but this time HR actually investigated properly. They interviewed me, they interviewed Casey, and they reviewed the trespassing order you filed. They also found out Casey had been tampering with your work schedule to try to prove you were lying about your pain levels." I asked what that meant. Amy said she changed your shift time so you'd have to work longer hours, hoping you'd call out sick. She even logged into your time card once to falsify your hours. That's a fireable offense on its own. They terminated her this morning. I sat there for a long moment. I thought I'd feel relieved, happy, vindicated, but mostly I just felt tired, exhausted down to my bones. I said, "So she's gone?" Amy nodded. "She tried to say you were the one who made up the disability for attention, but HR saw through it. You had all the documentation, the handicap placard, the doctor's notes, the workplace accommodations. They realized she was obsessed. After Casey was fired, I took a week off. I slept a lot. I went to therapy. I stopped checking over my shoulder every time I left the house. The threat was gone, but the fear didn't disappear overnight. I also got a new phone number. Casey had somehow gotten my old one and had been sending me texts from a burner app. The last one said, 'This isn't over.' I saved it as evidence. Now, 3 months later, I'm back at work. The team is better without her. Amy got promoted and I got a small raise. Sometimes I see a woman with dark hair in a car and my heart stops for a second, but then I realize it's not her. I still carry my cane even on medium pain days because I'm not hiding anymore. I'm disabled and that's the truth. No video is going to change that. But I learned something through all of this. People like Casey don't stop because they're convinced they're right. They stop only when the consequences become too heavy to ignore. I wish I hadn't had to fight that hard just to be believed, but I'm still standing, and that's more than she can say. And then, not long after I got my life back from Casey, I stumbled across another story that someone told at a gathering. I didn't share mine, but I listened. A woman I barely knew sat down next to me at a friend's barbecue, and she started talking about her ex. It wasn't small talk. She said, "I learned the real reason my ex left me, and it's nothing like I ever imagined." I knew that feeling, so I just let her talk. She'd been with her ex-fiancé for almost 10 years. 10 years, they were in their early 30s, planning a wedding, trying for a baby. She said everything felt solid. Then one day he just started acting off. No more "I love you" before work. He'd come home late, drinking with friends. She thought it was his mental health. He'd been struggling since the COVID lockdowns, so she sat him down one evening and asked if everything was okay. He brushed it off. She changed the question, "Are we okay?" He paused. She said she knew right then in that silence. It was over. He told her he loved her but wasn't in love with her anymore. Within a week he moved out, leaving most of his stuff behind. She spiraled, hit rock bottom, tried to end her life. A friend got her to the hospital before any serious damage. She spent months in therapy trying to understand why he left. She blamed herself. What if she'd been too needy, not exciting enough, too focused on having a baby? She'd go over those last few weeks in her head, every look, every word. Nothing explained it. Then about a year later, she got a message from an old friend of his. The friend said, "I think you deserve to know the truth. He didn't fall out of love. He found out he was infertile." The ex had been tested for some routine thing and discovered he had a very low sperm count. Basically zero chance of fatherhood naturally. And they'd been trying to get pregnant. She was ovulating, tracking cycles, everything. He couldn't face telling her. He didn't want to be the reason she never had kids, so he checked out, made himself the villain so she'd hate him instead of pity him, but he never said a word about his diagnosis. She told me she sat there staring at her phone for an hour after reading that message. She felt numb at first, then angry, then devastated all over again, not because of the infertility, she would have supported him through that, looked into adoption, IVF, whatever, but because he took that choice away from her. He decided for both of them without even letting her know. She spent almost a decade with a man who couldn't be honest about what was really going on. She tried to reach out to him. They hadn't spoken since the breakup. He'd moved states, changed his number. She found him on LinkedIn and sent a message. "I know why you left. I'm not angry about the infertility. I'm angry that you didn't trust me enough to tell me." She never got a response. But she told me that knowing the truth actually helped her heal. She stopped blaming herself. She started dating again. Now she's engaged to a guy who's completely open about everything, his fears, his dreams, his health. They have 2 cats and talk about maybe fostering kids someday. She said, "If there's one thing I learned, never let someone else decide what you can handle. He thought he was protecting me, but he just broke me harder." I nodded. I thought about Casey, about all the people who decide for you what you are or aren't. It's a special kind of cruelty. Another story I heard, this one from a close friend's sister. Her name's not important. But she had a situation that was so tangled I almost didn't believe it. She started dating a guy named George. George was older, had a past, partying, drugs, not reliable. But when they met, he had already started turning his life around. He quit drinking, quit the drugs, went to therapy. Serious about her, they built a healthy relationship. She was happy. Then she found out her sister-in-law, Ella, was George's ex. Ella was married to her brother David, and Ella was furious, not just annoyed, unhinged. She started spreading lies that George was grooming her. She was 25, he was 36, that he was abusing her, trying to make her an addict. None of it was true. Ella told everyone George had changed for her, that he was supposed to be with her, and then he threw her away. She was convinced their whole relationship was a personal attack on her. My friend's sister tried to stay out of it, but Ella wouldn't stop. She sent nasty texts to George, called him at work, even showed up at their apartment one night crying and screaming. Finally, the sister told her brother David. He didn't believe her at first. Ella was his wife. But he checked Ella's phone, found months of messages. Ella had been telling George she still loved him, threatening to ruin their lives if he didn't leave his girlfriend. David confronted Ella. She broke down, admitted she was jealous, said she still loved George. David filed for divorce within 3 weeks. The whole family banned Ella from every event, birthdays, holidays, even funerals. They cut her off completely. And George and the sister are still together, engaged now. She told me sometimes the trash takes itself out, but you still need a shovel to get rid of the mess. I thought about that as I sat in my apartment. Kane leaned against the couch. Casey was gone. The EEOC investigation had wrapped up and they found in my favor. I got a settlement, nothing huge, but enough to cover the legal fees and some therapy. My boss Amy got promoted. I got a raise. I still flinch sometimes when I see a dark car, but it's getting better. The thing about stories is they remind you that you're not alone. Everyone has their Casey, their ex who couldn't be honest, their jealous sister-in-law, the coworker who films you in the grocery store, but we keep going. We file the reports, we call HR, we get the trespassing order. We sit down with the people we love and ask the hard questions, and sometimes we get the ending we deserve. I met her at a support group for people dealing with workplace harassment. She was older than me, maybe late 20s, and she had this tired look that I recognized. She wasn't there for the same reason as me, she came because of family drama. But when she started talking, everyone leaned in. She said, "I never thought I'd have to defend my relationship against my brother's wife, but here we are." Her name was Sarah. She was 27, engaged to a guy named George. George was 38. They'd been together for 2 years. Before that, George had a rough patch, partying, drugs, not reliable. But when he met Sarah, he turned everything around. Quit drinking cold turkey, stopped the drugs, started therapy. He became a different person. She was proud of him. Their relationship was healthy. They were planning a wedding. Then she found out that George's ex-girlfriend was Ella. And Ella was married to her brother David. Small world, right? Except Ella was not okay with it. Sarah told us that Ella had dated George about 4 years ago for 6 months. Ella wanted marriage and kids, George didn't, he was still deep in his partying phase. The breakup was messy. Then Ella met David, Sarah's brother, and within 6 or 7 months they were married. Fast. So by the time Sarah met George, Ella was already her sister-in-law. Sarah had no idea they had history, George never mentioned it, but when Ella found out she lost it, started spreading lies. She told everyone that George was grooming Sarah because of the 11-year age gap. Sarah was 25 when they started dating. Grooming is a real thing, but that wasn't it. Ella also said George was abusing Sarah. She claimed he was trying to turn her into an addict like he used to be. None of it was true. George had been sober for over a year by then. He had a steady job, he went to therapy every week, but Ella didn't care, she wanted to destroy them. Sarah tried to stay out of it, she didn't want to cause drama in her family, but Ella wouldn't stop. She started sending nasty texts to George, calling him at work, showing up at their apartment uninvited. One night, she stood outside their door crying and screaming that George had promised her forever. Sarah opened the door and told her to leave. Ella pushed past her, ran into the living room and started grabbing things off the shelves. She threw a picture frame at the wall. George called the cops. They took a report, but since there was no physical injury, they just told Ella to leave and not come back. That was 2 months before Sarah finally told her brother David. She didn't want to believe that his wife was this unstable, but she had no choice. David didn't believe her at first. He said Ella had been stressed, that she was just jealous. Sarah showed him the texts Ella had sent to George, love confessions mixed with threats. "I still love you, George, you know we were meant to be. If you don't leave her, I'll make sure everyone knows what you really are." David read those messages. His face went white. He went home and confronted Ella. She broke down, admitted she still loved George, said she thought if she could break them up, he'd come back. She said she was sorry. David filed for divorce 3 weeks later. The whole family cut her off. She was banned from birthday parties, Thanksgiving, Christmas, even funerals. Sarah said her mom cried for days. But they couldn't have someone that toxic around. George and Sarah are still together, engaged. They set a date for next spring. Sarah told us that Ella still tries to reach out every few months, sends a text or a letter. The last one said, "You took everything from me, enjoy your new life, I hope he leaves you too." Sarah blocked her. She said, "Sometimes the trash takes itself out, but you still need a shovel to get rid of the mess." I nodded when she finished. We all did, because that's the thing about people like Casey and Ella and that ex who couldn't tell the truth. They think they're fighting for something, but they're just destroying everything they touch, and the rest of us have to clean it up. Then another woman spoke up. She was maybe mid-30s, dark circles under her eyes, and she had a way of talking that made you feel like she'd been holding this in for a long time. She said, "My name's not important, but you can call me Anna. My story doesn't have a neat ending, but I finally know the truth, and that's something." She took a breath. 2 years ago, my ex-fiancé left me. His name is Jacob. We'd been together almost 10 years since we were both in college, 22 years old. By the time we were 32, we had a house, 2 cats, and a wedding date. We were finally going to try for a baby. I was 34, and my biological clock was screaming. Jacob was 36, and he said he was ready. We'd been engaged for 2 years, and we'd put off kids because he wanted to be financially stable first. Then one day, he just changed. She paused, twisting a tissue in her hands. It started small. He stopped saying "I love you" before he left for work. I noticed, but I thought he was tired. Then he started coming home late, like 2 or 3 hours late. He said he was grabbing drinks with his buddies. I'd ask him where he'd been, and he'd snap at me like I was being controlling. That was so not like him. We used to text each other during the day, little things, "Hey, thinking of you," or "What do you want for dinner?" And that stopped too. I thought maybe he was stressed about work, or maybe his mental health was dipping again. He'd struggled with anxiety after the lockdowns, so I tried to be supportive. I made his favorite meals. I gave him space. I didn't push. She shook her head. But the silence got louder. One Sunday evening, we were sitting on the couch watching some mindless show, and he was completely checked out, staring at the wall. I turned off the TV and said, "Jacob, talk to me." "What's going on?" He didn't look at me. He just said, "Nothing, I'm fine." I said, "Then are we okay?" He didn't answer for a solid 30 seconds, and in that pause I knew I could feel it in my stomach. I asked him straight out, "Do you still love me?" And he finally looked at me and his eyes were wet and he said, "I love you, but I'm not in love with you anymore." Just like that. Anna's voice cracked. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I just sat there frozen. He said he'd been feeling this way for months, but he didn't know how to tell me. He said he thought I deserved someone who could give me everything. I asked him if there was someone else. He said no. I asked if it was something I did. He said no, it was him, not me. Classic breakup script, right? But I believed him because he was always honest. That was what killed me. He'd never lied to me before. She wiped her eyes. Within a week, he was out. He left 90% of his stuff, clothes, books, the photo albums, everything. He said he'd pick it up later, but he never did. I had to box it all up and put it in the garage. Every time I walked past those boxes, I felt like he was still there, but not. The first month was a blur. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the last few months, looking for signs I missed. Did I nag him too much about the baby? Did I not support him enough? I lost 10 pounds. I called out of work sick so many times I almost got fired. And one night I just couldn't take it anymore. I took a bottle of pills I'd been saving from an old prescription. I didn't want to die, I just wanted the pain to stop, but it didn't work. A friend found me, she had a key, and she came over because I wasn't answering my phone. She got me to the ER in time. I spent 3 days in the psych ward. I'll never forget the look on her face. Anna took a sip of water. After that, I got into therapy. I slowly started eating again. I got a new job, something remote, so I didn't have to see anyone. I deleted all my social media because I couldn't stand seeing Jacob's face. He hadn't reached out at all after he left. Not a single text, not a phone call. I told myself he was a coward. I told myself I was better off. But I never got closure. I never understood why he really left. And that ate at me. She looked at the group. A month ago, I got a message on Facebook from one of Jacob's old college roommates. We stayed acquaintances. He said, Anna, I know this is random, but I need to tell you something. Jacob asked me not to, but I think you deserve to know. And then he told me the truth. Her eyes hardened. Jacob had been diagnosed with a condition that made him infertile. He'd known for about 6 months before he left. He went to a specialist, got the tests, and he never told me. He was ashamed. He thought if I found out, I'd stay with him out of pity or I'd leave him because I wanted kids. So he decided to make the choice for both of us. He ghosted me because he thought he was being noble. He loved me enough to let me go. Those were his words, according to the roommate. I sat there reading that message and I felt this wave of anger like I'd never felt before. Not sadness, pure white-hot rage. She clenched her fist. I called Jacob that night. He answered and I said, I know about the infertility. I know you left because you couldn't give me a baby, and you never gave me a choice. He started crying, apologizing, saying he was trying to protect me. I told him he wasn't protecting me, he was protecting his own ego. He robbed me of a year of my life. He robbed me of the chance to decide what I wanted. Maybe I would have stayed, maybe we would have adopted, maybe we would have used a donor, but he never asked. He just decided I couldn't handle it, and that's what hurt more than the breakup itself. Anna let out a shaky breath. So now I'm here, I'm still angry, but I'm also free in a weird way because now I know it wasn't my fault. It was never about me, it was about his inability to be vulnerable, and that's not something I could have fixed. She looked around the room. I don't know if I'll ever talk to him again. I don't need to, I just needed to say it out loud. The room was quiet for a moment, then another woman spoke up. She was in her late 20s, her voice steady but tired. She said, My name is Maya, and I'm still in the middle of my nightmare. She leaned forward. I never thought a coworker would follow me around with a camera just to prove I'm faking my disability. But that's exactly what happened. Maya explained that she has chronic pain, not the kind that shows up on an X-ray or a blood test. The kind that lives in your nerves and your muscles and your bones, and it changes day to day. She said, if pain is on a scale of 1 to 10, most people walk around at a 1 or a 2. Maybe they stubbed their toe, maybe they slept weird. I'm at a 6 most days. Imagine pulling a muscle in your back and every time you move it twinges. That's my baseline. Some days I'm a 7 or an 8. Rarely I get a 4. And on those days I feel like I could run a marathon, but I can't. Because the next day I'm back to a 6. She has canes. She uses them on days she's a 7 or above. She also has a handicap placard for her car. She filed all the proper paperwork with her job, a full-time gig and a part-time assistant coordinator position at a different company. She'd been moved to a new location closer to her home. Her boss, Amy, was great, but there was another assistant coordinator there named Casey. Casey wanted a promotion badly, everyone knew it. And I was the new person who made it clear I didn't want that promotion. I'm happy with my 2 jobs. But Casey saw me as competition anyway. She thought if she could prove I was less capable, she'd get the promotion. Maya took a breath. It started small, little comments. You don't seem like you're in pain today. I saw you walking fast in the parking lot. I'd just say, yeah, it's a good day. I didn't think much of it. I thought Casey was just nosy. Then came the Sunday. Maya was having a bad day, a solid 8 on the pain scale. She used her cane. She parked in the handicap spot. She was moving slow, wincing with every step. She went to a grocery store to pick up a few things. When she came out, she saw Casey's car parked 2 rows away. Casey was sitting inside, phone pointed at her. I didn't realize she was recording at first. I thought she was just there. But when I got home, I got a text from Amy. She said, Maya, I need to talk to you about something. Please come in tomorrow. I asked what it was about. She said, Casey forwarded me a video. She said she caught you faking your disability. Maya's voice hardened. I showed up to work the next day. Amy was clearly uncomfortable. She showed me the video. It was me walking out of the grocery store with my cane. But Casey had edited it to slow down the part where I got into my car without using the cane because I was able to grip the door handle and lower myself in. That's not faking, that's managing. But Casey had captioned it, see, she doesn't need the cane, she just uses it for sympathy. Maya looked around the room. I explained to Amy that my condition is intermittent. Some days I need the cane, some days I don't. And even on bad days, I have moments where I can move better. That's normal for chronic pain. Amy believed me. She told me she'd speak to HR about Casey's behavior, but Casey didn't stop. Over the next 2 weeks, Casey started following Maya outside of work. She'd park near Maya's apartment. She'd take videos of Maya walking to her mailbox. She even recorded Maya sitting on her porch. Maya found out because a neighbor told her, hey, there's a woman in a blue sedan who keeps driving by your building. Maya reported it to the police. They took a report, but she could tell they weren't taking it seriously. She's black. She lives in Texas. The officer said, it's just a coworker being weird. Tell your boss. Maya said, I already did. The officer shrugged. She went back to HR, she filed a formal complaint. She provided the video Casey had taken at work plus a log of times and dates when Casey had been near her home. HR said they'd investigate. Meanwhile, Casey kept showing up. Maya would be grabbing takeout from a restaurant and Casey would be in the parking lot. Maya would be at a gas station and Casey would be 2 pumps over filming. I was terrified. I started staying inside. I stopped going places. I bought curtains. I checked under my car before getting in. I felt like I was being hunted. Amy called Maya one evening. She said HR had decided to give Casey a warning, not a suspension, not termination, because Casey had cried and said she was just concerned about workplace integrity. Maya said, I almost quit, but I couldn't let her win. Then came the final straw. Maya was at a park, sitting on a bench, just trying to get some fresh air. She was having a decent day of 4. She didn't bring her cane, she was just sitting, watching people. And then she heard a voice, see, no cane, not disabled. She looked up. Casey was standing 10 feet away, phone out, recording. Maya stood up. She said, Casey, you need to stop, this is harassment. Casey said, I'm just documenting the truth, you're a fraud. Maya pulled out her own phone, she started recording Casey. She said, you are following me to a public park, I have never done anything to you, this is stalking. Casey lunged for Maya's phone, they struggled. Maya dropped the phone and Casey grabbed it and threw it into a nearby pond. Then Casey ran to her car and drove off. Maya went to the police again. She showed them the bruises on her arm from the struggle. She gave them the names of witnesses, a couple who had been walking their dog and saw the whole thing. Finally, the police took it seriously. They pulled Casey's license plate from the park entrance camera. HR acted that same week. Casey was fired. She tried to appeal, but Amy had documented everything. Casey filed a wrongful termination suit, but it was dismissed because her own video evidence showed her stalking Maya, not the other way around. Maya said, I still work there, Casey doesn't, but I still look over my shoulder. I still check every car in the parking lot. I got a Ring camera, I carry pepper spray now. The whole experience made me realize how easily people can try to tear you down when they want something you have. She finished, I'm not disabled the way they want me to be. I don't look the part every day, but that doesn't make my pain any less real, and I'll never let someone like Casey make me feel like I have to prove myself again. The group nodded in silence, and then someone else cleared their throat. I never thought I'd be the reason my brother got divorced, but here we are. My name is Chloe, I'm 27, and I've been engaged to a man named George for about 8 months now. George is 38. He's a former party guy, drugs, booze, the whole self-destructive thing, but he got clean 2 years ago when we started dating. And I mean clean, he quit cold turkey, started therapy, got a steady job. He's a completely different person now, I'm proud of him, but my sister-in-law Ella, she hates him, she hates me. And she's been trying to destroy our relationship since day one. The worst part, Ella is married to my older brother David, and she's George's ex-girlfriend. I know it sounds like a soap opera. Let me back up. 4 years ago, George and Ella dated for about 6 months. Ella wanted marriage and kids. George wasn't ready, he was still deep in his addiction, wasn't reliable, wasn't the kind of guy you build a future with, so they broke up. Messy. Not long after, Ella met my brother David at a mutual friend's barbecue. They moved fast, dated for a few months, got engaged, married within a year of meeting. David was head over heels. He thought he'd found the one. I met George 2 years ago through a work event. We hit it off immediately. I had no idea he was Ella's ex. How could I? She never talked about him. She only talked about how perfect her marriage was, how David was the best thing that ever happened to her. I didn't think twice. When George and I started dating, I noticed he was different. He was open about his past, told me about the drinking, the drugs, the mess he used to be. He said he wanted to change for me, and he did. He started going to numb meetings. He got a sponsor. He saw a therapist twice a week. He was serious. I believed him. Then Ella found out. She came to my parents' house one Sunday for dinner. I brought George along because my mom wanted to meet him. Everything was fine until Ella walked in. She froze when she saw him. Her face went white. She said, what is he doing here? My mom said, that's Chloe's boyfriend. Ella just stared at me. She said, you're dating my ex, seriously? And then she turned around and left without eating. I didn't understand. I had no idea they were exes. My brother followed her out and they got in a huge fight in the driveway. David came back inside looking confused. He said she never told me she dated someone named George. She said his name was Greg. I said, well, his name is George. David shrugged. We all thought it was just awkward history, but Ella didn't let it go. She started spreading rumors. She told my parents that George was a predator. She said he was grooming me because I was 25 and he was 36. She said that's not a normal age gap. He's trying to control her. She told my brother that George was abusing me, said she saw bruises on my arm when I wore short sleeves. There were no bruises. She made them up. She said George was still using drugs, that he was going to drag me down with him. None of it was true. I tried to ignore her. George and I kept dating. We kept building our life. I moved in with him 6 months ago. He proposed at a family dinner last December right in front of everyone. He got down on one knee in my parents' living room right after Christmas Eve dinner. My mom cried. My dad shook his hand. David was happy for us, but Ella, she screamed. She stood up and said, are you serious? You're letting this man into our family? He's a drug addict. He's going to kill her. My dad said, Ella, that's enough. She said, no, you don't understand. I know him. He used to beat me. He used to hit me when we were together. That was a lie. I knew it was a lie because George had told me everything about their relationship. He said they fought, but it was verbal. He never hit her. But she stood there, crying, shaking, and said, I have scars, I can show you. He put cigarettes out on my arm. My brother looked at George. George was pale. He said, that never happened. I never touched her like that. Ella said, see, gaslighting, he's gaslighting you all. I lost it. I said, Ella, I have seen his phone. I have seen his therapy notes. He's been clean for 2 years. He's never laid a hand on anyone. You're lying because you're jealous. She just kept crying. She said, you'll see he'll do it to you too. David was quiet. He looked at Ella. He said, can you prove it? She said, I have pictures. I have a police report. David said, show me. She said, they're at home. I'll show you later. But she never did. Over the next few weeks, David started asking questions. He asked George to take a drug test. George agreed. It came back clean. He asked me if George had ever hurt me. I said no. I showed him our text messages, our call logs, our shared calendar. Everything was normal. David started to realize his wife was full of crap. The breaking point came in February. Ella tried to file a restraining order against George. She claimed he was stalking her, sending her threatening messages. She showed the judge screenshots of texts that said things like, you'll regret what you did and I know where you live. But the timestamps didn't match. And George had an alibi. He was with me the whole time. The judge dismissed the order and asked if Ella had ever been evaluated for mental health issues. David finally saw the truth. He came over to our apartment one night. He looked exhausted. He said, I found her old journal. She wrote about how she wanted to destroy your relationship. She said she couldn't stand seeing George happy with someone else. She wrote that she would do whatever it took to break you two up. I didn't know what to say. David started crying. He said, she's been lying to me since day one. She told me she was over George. She told me she never loved him, but she's been obsessed with him the whole time. She married me just to stay close to him. My stomach dropped. I said, David, that's not your fault. He said, I know, but I can't stay with her. How can I trust anything she says? He filed for divorce a week later. Ella fought it. She tried to say David was abusive. She tried to take the house, the car, everything. But David had evidence, her journal, the fake texts, the failed restraining order. The judge awarded him the house and full custody of their dog. Ella got nothing. She moved out of state. I heard she's living with her parents now. She still posts online about how I stole her ex and how my brother is a monster. But nobody in my family talks to her anymore. My parents banned her from all family events. My mom said I will never forgive her for what she tried to do to Chloe. George and I are still engaged. We set a date for next spring. David is doing better. He's in therapy. He's dating again. He says he's grateful that I found George because it made him see who Ella really was. I don't feel guilty. I don't. She brought it on herself. But sometimes I wonder what would have happened if George and I had never met. Would David have stayed married to her forever? Would she have kept lying? Would she have eventually tried to hurt me in a different way? I don't know, but I'm glad I know the truth, and I'm glad George is finally free of her too. The room went quiet after Chloe spoke. Then someone near the back said, that's insane. She literally married your brother to stay close to her ex. Chloe nodded. Yeah, it's crazy what people will do when they can't let go. But that's not the only story that stuck with me. There was another one that showed how far people will go when they think they know better than you. This one I heard from a woman who dealt with a completely different kind of crazy. The kind that comes from a coworker who just can't mind her own business. She started by saying, I have chronic pain. Not like, oh, I have a headache, chronic pain. I mean, every single day my baseline is at a 6 on the pain scale. Imagine pulling a muscle and feeling that dull ache every time you move. That's my normal. Some days I'm at a 4 or 5, which feels like a miracle. Other days I'm at an 8 or 9 and I need my canes. I own a couple of them, but I only bust them out when it's really bad. I've got a handicap placard on my rearview mirror, a handicap marker on my license plate, and all the proper paperwork filed with my job. I'm legally disabled. But you wouldn't know it most days because I push through. I have a full-time job and a part-time job. The part-time gig is at a place that expanded and moved me to a location closer to home. I loved my new team. My boss Amy was great, but there was this other assistant coordinator named Casey. Casey wanted a promotion really bad. Everyone knew it. I didn't care about promotions. I already had a full-time job, and this part-time thing was just to pad my savings and keep my anxiety in check. But Casey saw me as competition anyway. She didn't like that I was there. Then one Sunday, I was having a bad pain day, a 7 or 8. I used my cane to walk into the store. That's when Casey decided she was going to prove I didn't need accommodations. She followed me to my car on her lunch break and filmed me walking. She recorded me getting in the car, putting the cane in the back seat, driving away. She showed that video to Amy and said, look, she's faking it. She only uses the cane when she wants attention. Amy called me in and showed me the video. I was stunned. I said, that was a bad day. I have paperwork on file. You know I'm disabled. Amy said she believed me, but that HR had to investigate because Casey filed a formal complaint accusing me of fraud. That was when everything changed. HR launched an investigation. They asked for my medical records. I provided everything. Casey doubled down. She started parking near my house and taking more videos of me, one where I was carrying groceries, another where I was playing with my dog in the backyard. She sent those to HR too. I was terrified. I'm black and live in Texas. I knew how this could go. I went to the police and tried to file a stalking report. The officer basically shrugged and said, "She's just being zealous. It's a workplace issue, not a criminal one." They took a report but never followed up. The investigation dragged on for weeks. Casey started telling other coworkers that I was milking the system and that I didn't look disabled. I felt like I had to wear a sign around my neck explaining my medical history, but I kept working, I kept showing up. Then the update came. After a month of investigation, HR ruled in my favor. They said Casey's videos didn't prove anything. They actually showed me using the cane when I needed it, and the other videos were taken on days when I clearly wasn't having a flare-up. They said Casey had violated company policy by surveilling me off the clock. She was given a final warning and reassigned to a different location. But that wasn't the end. Casey appealed to the district manager. She also started posting on social media that I was a fake disabled person and that I was getting away with fraud. She tagged the company. The company's PR team got involved. They ended up issuing a public statement supporting my medical need for accommodations and condemning Casey's actions. Casey eventually quit, but I spent months looking over my shoulder. Every time I saw a car that looked like hers, I tensed up. I changed my routine.